Good morning. My name is Felix. I'm Regional President for Verifone of Europe and Russia. I'm delighted this morning to have Dr. Louise Beaumont joining me here on stage because she has a lot to share with us in terms of the open new world we're about to enter.
Hello, my name is Louise Beaumont. I'm independent. I've got 3 roles in life. In the first set of roles, I work with legislators and regulators to help them create disruption. In my second set of roles, I work with corporates to help them cope with disruption. And in the third set of roles, I invest in and advise startups to help them exploit disruption. So create disruption, cope with disruption, and exploit disruption.
That's fabulous. It's interesting because you're in every angle of this whole new debate. And it would be interesting for you to kind of summarize what you think the critical issues and opportunities are in your experience and as you look forward in the next 3 to 5 years.
So I think the big thing which is happening is consumers owning their own data. They generate it, they own it. And we have regulation which is driving this, whether that's the open banking standard in the UK, PSD2 across Europe. 12 jurisdictions around the world are really interested in this. And we also have the fun and games that is GDPR. So the consumer owns their data and has to consent to share it. That means the years, the decades we've had of companies doing a big, dumb product push, which is mass marketed without consideration to the end customer, is over. And what we're talking about as we go forward is hyper-personalized, predictive and preemptive services which wrap around that end consumer.
Now that sounds perfect. Sounds perfect, but it's also incredibly challenging, right? Because you have the masses and petabytes, and I don't even know what the next level up is of data that has to be intelligently, customized or aggregated, and a profile that's relevant has to be then, hopefully capitalized on.
And that's the interesting thing, because I think a lot of companies will still try to think of this as having that great phrase from a couple of decades ago, one view of the customer, and they'll still keep trying to do that. Actually, what the customer has is, will have over time, is a unified view of the services they use. So if you look at it from a consumer's point of view, imagine a daisy. So that lovely flower we all grew up with, a little yellow bit in the middle, that's you. And then you've got petals around the daisy. And think of each of those petals as a petal of data. So at the moment, we've got our banking current accounts that we can choose to share if we want to, for services which we find valuable, useful. In time, we'll have the mortgages petal of data, the savings petal of data, loans. In Australia, they're going to bring in the energy petal of data, the telco petal of data. You could imagine being able to plug in your health petal of data. What about insurance? What about pensions? What about your retail life? And as you are able to, and then consent to, choose to share those petals of data, the services that wrap around you will get ever more intelligent. And the services which fail to be intelligent, you'll stop using. And if you ask me what those services are, they're the services we never imagined, the services we never asked for, and the services we can't live without. Because as that data becomes available, unmet and underserved needs will be uncovered. So no longer is it about having a big dumb product that you push, it's about finding what really matters to that individual. So it's one-to-one at scale.
Yeah, it sounds like a beautiful future. I love your analogy of the daisy. I can imagine there'll be a lot of chaos along the journey because that whole customized, personalized concierge service that all of us would like, because we're all busy people, also puts a real burden potentially on the consumer to think about what data they present, right? Now it's a big responsibility. How do consumers become, I guess, trained or aware of that responsibility?
So there's a lot of research out there which will tell you that consumers are scared of sharing their data. They would never do such a thing. They've been told it's bad and they won't do it. Unfortunately, the truth is behavior indicates that they're sharing data
Already, yes.
with impressive promiscuity on a daily basis. And they many times are doing this unknowingly, so there is an absolute education requirement. But if you try and do it as education, it never works. Right. It's like the cod liver oil principle. We know it's good for us, but we don't like it. The way that people will start to understand what their data means and how valuable it is to them is via the services that they can access. And you learn it through the prism of service. So for example, and Uber's an example we all understand, if I am willing to tell a company where I am and what I want, the unmet or underserved need is they bring it to me. Now, if they provide that service in a way which is effective, efficient, valuable to me, and pleasurable to me, I will continue to use it. So I will continue to consent to share my location and my requirement with Uber. Question is, what else are they taking? Yes. And what else am I consenting to with or without my knowledge? So I think as those services become available, people will start to go, okay, I am willing to consent to that, or actually I'm not. So we all know those apps that say, download the app, and you look at the data requirements on it, you go, no, I'm not going to do that. The offer that the service gives me is not enough for me to say this data is part of the service that you provide. So will people be talking about it in the way that I am? No, the man on the street, the woman on the street won't. But you see them choosing which services to use based on how valuable, and the key word here is pleasurable, those services are. Because you can access services which are highly pleasurable to you and you give away a lot of rights. So kids who've got the Pokemon Go app on their phone have consented to a whole load of stuff. Right. And so I think this is where we need to get the balance right as consumers between the services we want to access, the value that it gives to us, and the pleasure we derive from it.
Yes, well, one of the concerns, I guess, is once the data is out there, it's there, right? And a lot of evidence shows that, you know, if you put something on the web, it doesn't really ever get erased. So people, when they make those choices, may think, oh, you know, there are a lot of potential scams that people say, oh, I'm going to give all this data in exchange for this service, only to find that that was fraudulent. So it is going to be a really tricky world, and I think that's where potentially regulation, potentially policies will help. But
it's certainly something, if you look at the open banking standard in the UK, it's something the Competition and Markets Authority really thought about. They understand that without security, the services aren't safe. Without safety, the services aren't trusted. Without trust, the services aren't used. So they absolutely have focused on security from the very beginning in designing the standards and then the API specifications that come out of it. But ultimately, the user experience, the trust that you have in the brand, the way that it talks to you as an individual and listens to you as an individual, the services that get developed, and the transference of value out of the data will be what determines which companies are successful in that open future. Because ultimately what we're talking about doing is redefining loyalty. If you talk to me about loyalty today, what typically you'd be talking about is the loyalty that you feel to Barclays or HSBC or Sainsbury's, or name a big brand. Actually, that's completely the wrong way to look at it in the open future. Actually, what we're talking about in the open future is brands finally being able to be loyal to consumers.
interesting.
We've got to look down the right end of the trust telescope here.
Yeah.
Because if my bank or my retailer or my energy company really understood me, it could trust me.
So I'm going to throw you a wild question. Verifone as a company is in the payment space, and what we enable is payments at the last inch of retail, but also an omni-channel experience, you know, e-com, mobile. So in many ways, we're kind of at the center of many of those purchases, and to me, I would think that would be a very interesting way, because I'm a aggressive shopper, shall we say?
An aggressive
and I
shopper.
really enjoy the shopping experience, but I have no time. So in that world, do you see that a company like Verifone could really play a vital role to help develop the petals, as you say, around what that experience might be?
Well, in the way that you described it, that last inch, that trusted moment where you're handing over the cash, then yes, that's relevant to that retail experience, whatever it is that you're buying. So if the consumer has trust in that particular brand, in that particular transaction, that's something to think about. And then that becomes relevant to the retailers and more who are deploying that payment solution. Everybody wants to know that when they're handing over the money, which is one form of currency, we've discussed data as a form of currency, money is a form of currency, then they want to know that they're getting literally what they paid for.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, June.
It's been a delight to learn so much about what the future looks like from somebody that's in the center of the debate. So thank you.
Thank you, June.